Hello again, you guys. Boyd back with you, and we're here with another update on the C-57. We left off in the last video completing the interior work, and I'm getting ready for a big step in this video to drop the interior into the lower part of the saucer permanently, so I thought I'd show you guys the whole process of doing that. A lot of you guys asked me about how this chaser board was set up on the bottom here, so I wanted to show you this before I closed everything up. You can see this is the board that we got from Elliott Brown. And the board does not come assembled like I thought it did. The one that he sent to me was assembled, but if you order one from him, you'll just get the basic board. It's sort of like a little kit. You get the basic board, and then you get these LEDs to put onto it. These are 3mm reds. You can probably get those in different colors, like maybe white. I know that this same board will work in the large Mobius Jupiter 2 model kit, and you get that same rotating effect. Now, keep in mind, this is just a one-speed. You can't easily adjust the speed, once you've set it. It doesn't have like a multiple speed, button you can push or whatever. Tenacontrols has a similar system to this that does have multiple speeds available, and I think that the board does come assembled, so you can check that out. But this is a nice little board for this little project here. It worked out really good. You could see it came with these two brass sort of pedestals for this thing to sit on. I believe it was intended to be screwed into the bottom of the hull here, but I didn't, into the interior, or some kind of plate that you put across, if you weren't going to use the interior. And I didn't want to have holes in the floor of my interior, so I just epoxied those in place. Now what I did is I took a couple pieces of sprue about the same diameter, and I put two more of those on there so it has a four-legged support instead of just two, and then just epoxied those down, and that's how it's sitting on there. Now I had to put a lot of time and thought into routing out the cable here, because as I mentioned, I didn't want to have any shadows appearing in the rotation effect, and luckily we don't. Keeping this little ribbon cable that comes off of this nice and flat, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be, I'll take a little bit of hot glue and then fasten this down flat to the bottom here. We're going to take a couple little mini zip ties and get all this wiring tied in with it. And then when it sits in the bottom of the saucer, it doesn't interfere with anything. You can see it has these sort of little mounting pads here. We're going to put a bunch of epoxy on those and then glue that into the bottom of the saucer. This will be routed off to the side. When I bring the saucer over here and I show you in the next shot, you'll see that we have a little notch that we cut in there for this to go through. And that, I had to plan all this out because there's a certain part of the interior that I wanted indexed a certain way. So when you're looking dead on at the front of the model with the front landing step that has the detail of the rails and everything, I wanted a certain look to the index of the interior, because that's kind of my main focal shot or whatever. So when I put all this in, I had to make sure I index this in the proper place, so it would come out where I wanted it to, and all that good stuff. But so we're getting ready to drop this in there. We're going to go ahead and do that next. And then we've got this little board that came in from Tenacontrols that I ordered. This is a really nice little setup. This is the Tenacontrols remote system. You got a nice little 4-button remote here that we can set up with 4 on and off features. Now this can be set up a numerous amount of ways that you can get from Ralph. You can have combination of on off and momentary switches for things that you might want to activate that you got tied into this, like you've seen me do before here, like a soundboard or something like that, where you can cue certain sounds or turn on lights. Now what I'm going to be doing with this is I've got all 4 channels planned out here. The 5th one, or the 4th one there, I'm going to keep as a little bit of a surprise till the end. But the first one here is going to turn on the interior lighting. The second one here is going to turn on the landing lights on the legs. And then the third one's going to turn on our engine effect. And we'll show you what the 4th one will be here when we get towards the end. But yeah, this is a great little board. I'm going to put this right inside the hull. We're going to have this wiring set up so where it can run both on 9-volt battery and a power jack that I'll show you I set up here on the bottom of the ship, so when it goes down onto the diorama, instead of using those little contact photo etch parts you've seen me use before, this time I just used a regular 3mm plug. We'll just have the male part of the plug sticking up on the diorama, and then the female part will be in the ship, so when you just drop it down on there, it'll receive power. This is internal then, so we can just stand back and operate all of our stuff on the ship. And then if we want to pull it off the diorama with the 9-volt battery in there, we can still operate the ship. It won't run on, only a limited amount of time, but it'll be actually kind of cool to have it both ways there. So, all right, you guys, well, let me get everything brought over to the bench here. It's going to be a tight squeeze because I've got to set the saucer right in this area right here, or maybe my little stand next to us here, and we're going to so we can reach it with our solder iron and all of our other stuff that we need to use to get this wrapped up. We're going to get all this wiring locked down on the bottom, and then we'll be getting really close to sealing up the whole thing. That's gluing the two together, and that's a big step. That's when we're getting close to the end. So let me get everything set up, and I'll be right back, you guys. Okay, you guys, well, we're getting ready to move on to a really big step in the model build here, and that's getting the interior put in and dropped into the center part of the saucer here for the final step, and glue that all in place. That way we can have our boards all kind of laying where they're going to be and all of our connections ready to go. But before I do that, I wanted to show you guys what we've got going on the bottom of the saucer, because you won't be able to see all this after I get this sealed up. So just taking a quick look here, you can see right off the bat I did a little modifying like I talked about. I took a little bit of sprue and just slightly curved it and used my two-part epoxy here to reinforce these landing gear. These ramps, I guess you'd call them, more than landing gear, are the weakest link in this entire kit. There's just a tiny little contact spot where they glue on, and so you want to make sure those are on there nice and strong. So I put a little bit of epoxy around the sides here, and then I epoxied these little pieces of sprue in place to help reinforce all that. I made sure it clears everything on the bottom when our center section is in place. Then we've started on a lot of the electronics, kind of finalizing all this. You can see we've got our 5mm LEDs here, 1, 2, 3, for the landing legs to light up. And then we've got our wiring coming around here. So I want to explain how I wired all this up. I'll show you a quick picture here before we get going. On the bottom side, you can see I've installed a 3mm female jack. Now that's going to come in nice and handy, because this way it'll allow us to remove the model from the base at some point if we ever want to, once it's all set up on the diorama. So there'd be a corresponding male jack on the diorama rather than using those little photo etch contact points that you see me do. Basically think of this as just using the jack instead. We've just got basic power coming in, and that's plus and minus 9 volts. I'll have the base actually set up on a 9-volt power supply. That's going to power some little things that are in our base too. We'll get to that a little bit further down the road. But so that power line is coming up through here. So before I drop the top down, or the center section here, I've got to route this wiring up and above my lighting apparatus on the bottom for my spinning lighting effect, because like I said before, I don't want to have a shadow in there. So I've set this all up where I can loop that over the top. As I lower it down, I'll pull it through and everything will all be good. We'll tidy up all of our wiring coming out here and then connect it to everything else. But over in this open bay here, I chose to use that one for my 9-volt battery. So this model will be able to run on 9 volts all by itself, or when it's sitting on the base, it'll have constant power from a jack. Now, we're using this little Tenacontrols remote control board, and we're going to be able to turn off all of our functions by remote, control of all of our lighting. I've got 4 outputs on that are both on or off. So I've separated down into 4 areas here, how I'm going to wire this all up. And we'll get into the kind of the weeds of that here in just a little bit. Once we get the center section in there, I'm going to start connecting everything up, and then I'll show you what we're going to be doing there. But so we've got our 9-volt battery over here. This worked out really good. I'm going to use a piece of Velcro to hold it up. When you look at the ship from down below, you can't really see it up in there. And I'm using a really nice little 9-volt rechargeable battery. I'm going to talk about that a little bit here going forward too. But we come over with our power. We come all the way over to here where everything's going to junction together. So the battery can power up our remote board here. All the outputs on the remote board are going to be powering our individual things. So we don't have to bring power to anything. We're going to do that all from the board here. So the board powers up, and then we've got 4 buttons we can push to turn different things off and on. And it's all going to work out really good. Now, Tenacontrols mentions that if you're going to use a 9-volt battery or any kind of battery power for this board constantly draws a tiny little bit of power. So over time, your battery could go dead. So you need to install a little switch. Well, that worked out really good for me. So over in this little spot right here, if I can turn it, maybe you guys will be able to see it looking straight down there. I installed a little micro on and off switch that you reach from up inside here with your finger. And that way when it's on battery power, we have an isolated circuit, so it's separate from the main power coming in from our power supply. And that way when we're not using this, we can turn this off and the battery will be completely disconnected from the entire circuit. When I display this with battery power, if I make sure and turn the switch off at the end of everything, that way I know if I've got power coming in from the bottom, it can't reach the battery. You don't want to have a charger or a regular 9-volt power supply connected directly to that battery. That would not be good. So they're on 2 separate power circuits, and the switch is isolating the 2 of them. We'll kind of show you how that's all working when we tidy up the wiring over here. So that worked out really good. So at this point right now, I'm ready to set the center section down in. I'm going to put some 2-part epoxy on all these little high spots right here where I've kind of been doing some test fitting, figuring out where everything's going to touch. And then once this is set down in here, I'm going to let this dry a good 5 or 6 hours, and that way it's all in there nice and solid. We'll come back with you guys and show you the wiring coming out, and then show you all the rest of the connections that we're going to do here. And then we'll finish everything up in this video by doing a quick demo of how everything's going to work. Okay, so any questions about anything down in here, just drop it in the comments below, you guys. Be happy to answer it for you. All this stuff just got kind of figured out as I went along. And, you know, I kind of had some general ideas how I was trying to lay out all the wiring and stuff, but it just kind of worked its way out. Like I said, this wiring coming up through the center, I've got to pull it over the top of our interior ring there that we've got on the bottom for the lighting, so it doesn't accidentally drop down in there. Up inside here, I'm going to leave a little bit of slack because the bottom dome here, I used just regular canopy glue to hold that on. It's plenty strong. It'll never go anywhere, but if I ever had to in an extreme emergency situation because the board went haywire or something in here, I will be able to pull this off and get to it without, you know, breaking anything. That kind of glue is kind of soft in that way, so that works out really good. Plus it doesn't attack any of the clear plastic that we're using for this, so that always works out really good for that. All right, you guys, well, I'm going to put some glue in here, get this set down in here, and when we come back, we'll be drying for a little while, and we'll have our wiring ready to be finished up. Be right back. We are back again, everybody, and we're here for the final segment of this video. I've got all the wiring and components installed into our model now. The center section has been glued in place. Everything worked out really good. The contact points here on the bottom where this actually touches the ship or touches the lower saucer, I found out are actually kind of limited. I tried it in the real big flat spots that I thought it was going to touch, you know, putting some glue there, and when I lifted it up, I could see that I wasn't even making any contact on the bottom. So I came in here with some 2-part epoxy, and I used these little strips of styrene and kind of reinforced it here on the sides. And you can see I took the same stuff and I went down along the sides here and let it kind of drizzle down in there. So she's all in there nice and solid now. I've had it drying for a couple hours, and I could get it out of there if I wanted to, but it's going to take a lot of wrestling around, so I think it's in there permanently. But you can see we've got all of our little components in place here. We've got our control board from Elliott Brown that controls our engine spinning effect there on the bottom. As I mentioned, this is only a single speed. It's not, you know, adjustable with the remote or any kind of momentary switches, so you basically set the speed of that with a little potentiometer. Now, I installed that facing down like I talked about. I made this kind of crude little strap. It's not exactly pretty, but it's really strong. This will never go anywhere. And I drilled a tiny little hole on the bottom down here, and this way I can reach up in here with my little mini screwdriver. I can show you guys this, and I can actually get in there and I can adjust the speed on this rotation effect. So down the road, should this change on me a little bit or whatever, I can get back in there and readjust it. So I thought that was important that I did that. Over here we've got the Tenacontrols remote system receiver part of the board. Now this is really nice because I've gotten as far away as I could in my shop here, and from any kind of direction I've had it, you know, spun around facing the opposite direction or whatever, and it's a radio frequency. You know, it's not a line of sight type thing, so it picks up the signal from a really good distance, and I'm really happy with that. We even took our little, if you remember what the little remote looks like here, I painted this up to match the colors on our C-57 here, kind of make it look like it fits in. It kind of came in this really ugly kind of molded brown swirled plastic color, and I didn't like that, so I just took it apart real quick and painted it and thought that made it look a little nicer. So what we can do here now is we've got our 4 buttons. Each one of these is a on and off switch. Now Ralph can provide these in any combination you want of on and off or momentary switches, so you can basically tell him what you want and he'll set this up the way you want it. Now I wanted all 4 on and off switches, and so we can power up different things. Now I've got 3 things that I'm going to show you here. We're going to pause this real quick, and I'll put the lid on top of this so it looks nice when we show it to you. But so you've got these outputs you just have to wire up. Now you basically bring your power in, just your standard plus and minus. I talked about we're going to have a dual power system on this. So over here you can see I've got the 9-volt battery clip. They've got these convenient little slots that they molded into this kit right here. So the battery clip is down there. I used a piece of Velcro on the back side. I've got a rechargeable 9-volt battery up in there. And I mounted this little micro on and off switch in the next open port over here. So all I have to do is reach my finger up in there. I can turn this off or on. What's really important is that when you're not using the model, if it's on battery power, you definitely want to make sure you shut it off, because as I mentioned, the battery will draw down a little bit of power over time on your battery. And also, I've got this set up, as I showed you earlier, the little down in our landing foot down here. Once this goes onto the base, there's a female 3mm power jack on the bottom side of that, and I'll just have a male one sticking up so the model can be dropped down on that. So when it's running on that power, we don't want that power to come all the way through here and reach the battery, right? Because it's not designed to take that type of voltage for its charging. So this little switch will always be in the off position unless I'm running it on battery power. I guess that's the simplest way I can explain it. So we've got 2 separate power circuits. I've got 2 wires that come up from the bottom from the jack that go directly to the board here, right? And I've got 2 more that come from the battery that go directly to the board with this switch in between. Or, I'm sorry, the switch is over here. But that's what's stopping these 2 from, contacting each other. So you just always want to make sure, if you set it up like this, to never have the switch on when you're powering it when it's on the base, because it doesn't need the switch when it's on the base. The switch will be on the base itself, right? So that's how I set that up. And then you just got these outputs over here, so you figure out which ones, according to the instructions, are corresponding to each button, because I knew I wanted a certain effect. Like, say I wanted the interior lights to come on with the A button, I want the landing lights to come on with the B button, the C button I wanted the engine spinning effect, and for the number 4, I'm leaving that as a little bit of a mystery, you guys, until the final reveal here. I did something kind of cool, and we'll show you that at the very end. But so you identify the 4 wires, and then your power, the plus side of your power going to each component. So like our interior lighting, the plus side all just ties into your main power harness, right? The way we brought in the battery and the jack. So on the red side, you just connect all your plus components to that. We're controlling the switching of these components on the negative side. So the each wire of the 4 wires that comes off of our board here goes to the negative side of each component. So I've got 1 output, that goes over to our power up our little board right here on the negative only side. I've got 1 more that comes off to our negative side of our interior lighting. I've got 1 more that comes off to the negative side of our LEDs for our landing legs. And then the 4th one we'll actually show you a little bit later. But it's really simple. It sounds complicated, but it's really simple to set it up. And it works fantastic, like I said. Okay, guys, well, I'll take one more quick little pause here. I've been working on getting the final paint done on the top of the saucer here. I think you're going to like that when you see it. We're going to put the saucer lid on here temporarily, and then we'll show you a quick little demo of the lights working. And then the next video that we come back, we're actually going to be doing the final assembly. I'm probably going to glue this together, and then I'll show you guys the results of pulling it apart, pulling the tape and everything back off the edges once it's dried. The final steps that we're going to have to take is we're going to have to flip it over. We're going to have to paint on the bottom, the outer gray ring that goes around there. I've already done that on the top. And then we're going to have to do a little bit of putty work around our little seam here that we're going to create. And then this sucker's going to be done, you guys. We'll just be waiting for the domes to come in from Elliot Brown, and he's making good progress on those. So she's getting pretty close to being a wrap, everybody. All right, we'll come back with one more look at the lighting, and then we'll finish up this video. All right, everybody. Well, here's a look at the top of the saucer before we turn on the lights. I've decided to go with this this nice glossy finish on this. I've spent several hours on the painting of this, you guys. I had it in a satin finish, I had it in a flat, and then I had it in this gloss. And after all said and done, I think I like the gloss the best. It just the ship in the movie is not this glossy, but I just really think it looks cool, and it sort of shows off the nice job that we did on the you know, getting this saucer whipped into shape. Now, as I mentioned, you guys, this saucer is not perfect. You can see a couple little, you know, little things here and there going around the circumference, because there's nothing you can really do about that. The panels themselves are sort of domed in the center, but this is looking really good, you guys. I mean, this is about as good as you're going to get this kit to look. And the main thing is once we get this all glued together, the outer rim here is going to be nice and straight. And so all of that little imperfection you see there going around, that's a minor issue. And if you look at the actual studio prop, I'm going to show you some pictures of this. There's some screen grabs that I grabbed off of the film. You can actually see that there were some imperfections just like that in the original saucer itself. I kind of tend to look at it as like it's almost like a, you know, an aircraft wing where you can see the sort of the spar underneath of it, you know, so the structure of it. So that's what I'm going to chalk it up to, you guys. But I mean, that's as good as you're going to get this thing for being a segmented giant circle like it is. I'm really, really happy with it. We're going to come down on the bottom and do the same thing. It's just in a sort of a dull finish right now, and we've got to paint that outer ring on. But that's all going to come together in the last video once we get this all glued, and you'll see that in the next video segment. So for now, let's go ahead and get this thing turned on. I got to come back over here and reach up on this little bay right here, and we've got a little switch. And I'm just going to turn that to the on position. So it's basically armed, and then we can use our remote here. The first thing we do is we hit our A, which turns on the interior lighting, and now I can kind of spin this around and show you guys all the detail on that. Here's our bunk beds in there. Over here to the right, we have the chart room and the power station, they call it, back in there. Kind of a hatchway there. We have an upper control room. If you notice, I also added a couple little crew figures in here. I had some 1/72 scale figures laying around that I decided to use. Got a guy in the seated position up there at the upper level, and a kind of a supervisor guy here down by the astronavigator station. There's the stasis pads there in the back. So that all came together really nice. I think the lighting level looks really good for that. Down here, we can hit the button again, our B button. Turns on our lights for our landing ramps. Spin this around and show you the nice one with the stairs on it. The other two I just did is the conveyor belts like they were on the original prop. And then we've got our engine effect. If you can see that landing leg there, I painted that in a really nice bright metallic finish, like almost like a chrome. I noticed that detail on the studio model. The bottom of the landing leg is not shaped right. It's wider than it should be, but I'm not too worried about that. There used to be an aftermarket part to replace that, but this actually worked out really good because it was hollow, and I was able to put that 3mm power jack in there. But our lighting effect looks really good. And again, this is only one speed, but I'm pretty happy with it. I can adjust that up and down with that potentiometer if I want to. And then we've got a fourth button here that we're going to use, but we'll show you that a little bit further down the road, guys. I had a little fun with something a little extra I put into this. I thought I would surprise you guys with at the end. So there you have it, everybody. I'm really happy. Everything's coming together really good on this thing. And I'm finally at the point where I'm going to be able to glue this giant saucer together, and everything will all be in one piece. And you'll see all that in the next video. We'll catch up with you guys then. Until we do, like always, take care and happy modeling out there, everybody.